The part of Obsession that bothered me the most was not the cursed stick. It wasn't Nikki smashing her face. It wasn't the body horror. It wasn't even the ending. And the ending is a lot. We'll get there. It was this tiny moment where the real Nikki managed to break through whatever the wish has done to her. She looks at Bear and asks him to kill her. Not save her, not call somebody, kill her. And Bear looks at this woman who is telling him that being forced to love him is worse than dying. And his response is basically, what would be so bad about being with me? Somebody places their pain in front of you, and instead of hearing what they are saying, you turn their pain into a referendum on your worth. Stop asking what's happening to you, and you start asking, what does your suffering say about me? And I knew that move, not the curse wish part. I'm going to make that clear before somebody clips this out of context and turns my channel into a true crime exhibit. Said that word completely wrong. I knew the thinking underneath it. The belief that being lonely means you deserve to be chosen, that wanting a relationship badly enough is evidence that you are ready for one, that if someone would finally love you the way you want, and maybe everything inside you would stop feeling so broken. That is the part of Bear I recognized. And that recognition is why Obsession is the most uncomfortable movie I've ever seen. Because Curry Barker takes one of comedy's most familiar characters, the awkward, sensitive guy who just wants somebody to give him a chance, and he's not turning that guy into a monster. He does something worse. He lets him stay sincere. This movie's horror is not that Bear's feelings are fake. It is that sincerity is not a defense. Pain is not permission, and wanting to be loved does not give you the right to remove somebody else's ability to choose.
I was calling to see if there's a way I can cancel a wish.
I'm sorry, we don't really do that.
So she's just stuck like this forever?
Well, yeah, I mean, as long as you live.
As long as I live?
You've seen the new movie Obsession, right? Well, if you haven't, click off this video and watch it, because there will be a multitude of spoilers throughout, and you do not deserve a spoiler-filled breakdown of when you haven't seen the movie yet. For starters, what is Obsession about? And no, I don't mean the plot, the subplot, or the things you can pull up with Wikipedia. I mean, what is it trying to teach us about ourselves? Everybody's already giving you the poster version. Bear buys a one wish willow. He wishes that his friend Nikki will love him more than anyone in the fucking world, and then the wish works and horror follows. But that is the mechanism. The movie is about what happens when a person mistakes the intensity of his desire for evidence that the desire should be fulfilled. It's about love with the no removed. It's about how easily an audience can be recruited in someone else's fantasy, but when we recognize the genre of person asking us to believe it. So I have two claims. Curry Barker is a genius, and comedy is horrifying. I'm going to prove both. I like to laugh. I think most people do, but a lot of comedy is pain after somebody found the correct angle. Somebody was humiliated. Somebody misread a room. Somebody wanted something and did not get it, publicly at least. Then a comedian finds the exact beat that converts that discomfort into relief. And that is why this wave of sketch comedian becoming horror filmmakers makes so much sense to me. Jordan Peele, Zach Krieger, Curry Barker, Bill Hader, Markiplier, the list goes on and on. Sketch comedy trains you to notice how people actually talk. It trains you to understand status, who has it, who wants it, and who's pretending not to care. It trains you to find the precise second a normal interaction curdles. Sketch comedy is a technology for finding the moment a room becomes unbearable, and that's almost the exact same skill set as horror. The difference is what happens at the top of the escalation. Comedy releases the tension, horror holds it. There's another thing sketch teaches you. Do not blink. If a performer says, hey, I know this is uncomfortable, do not worry, the joke dies, if they signal that at all. You have to commit past the point where a normal person would bail. Barker brings that instinct into Obsession. He holds the awkwardness past the exit. He lets the moment go 1, 2, 3 beats longer than your body wants it to. And sometimes you laugh, and not because what you're seeing is funny, but because your nervous system is begging the scene to let you go. The thing I found the funniest, quote unquote, was the scene where they go to work the next day after Nikki has been wishified, and Nikki is behind the counter, and when Bear and Ann go to talk in the a little private area about what happened the previous night, Nikki is still smiling behind the counter, being real creepy. So I found that the scene the most disturbing, but the most laughable scene, if that makes sense. This is what Bear makes this is what makes Bear such a perfect character for Barker. Gosh, I can't talk. The nice guy who cannot take the hint is one of the oldest comedic engines we have. Sitcoms taught us to laugh at him. Rom-coms taught us that persistence was the plot. Teen movies taught us that if he kept trying long enough, the girl would eventually realize he was the right one. Barker does not have to change that character. He just stops scoring the scene like a comedy, points a horror camera at the guy we've been trained to root for. And suddenly the persistence looks like entitlement. The grand romantic fantasy looks like a refusal to accept another person's interior life. The joke was always standing next to the horror. Barker just declines to cut away. And obsession tells us that before Bear ever touches the willow, because the movie begins with a confession that is not real. The movie opens with Bear in a diner pouring his heart out to a woman. He tells her she is in his every waking thought. He has never felt this way about anyone. He is placing the entire emotional weight of his life on the table between them. Then Ian interrupts and tells them to stop because it is cringy. The woman is not Nikki. She is a waitress helping Bear rehearse a confession Nikki is not there to hear. It is funny, but it's also the first warning. Before the wish, Bear's relationship with intimacy is already staged. He wants the emotional release of confessing without the risk of an actual answer. The waitress cannot reject him on Nikki's behalf. She cannot complicate the version of Nikki is built in his head. Bear can perform vulnerability while remaining protected from the person. And the wish is the exact same move with higher stakes. The wish gives Bear an answer without requiring him to ask the question. That is what rejection is, in part. It is a discovery that someone else's interior life does not exist to complete the story who you wrote in yours. It hurts. Sometimes it's humiliating. Sometimes you lie in bed at 2 a.m. remembering every sentence you said because apparently your brain has a little employee whose only job is to ruin the evening. But the uncertainty is what makes the confession real. Bear wants real intimacy without submitting to real uncertainty. Even the way he describes Nikki tells on him. He talks about what she has done for him. She was there when his grandmother died. That was really Sarah. She makes him feel less alone. That's really Sarah. He knows the relief Nikki provides better than he knows, or at least better than he can articulate who Nikki is when she's not providing it. Bear is in love with being less alone. Nikki is the shape that relief happens to be wearing. Then Sandy dies. Bear comes home and finds his cat dead after she gets into his late grandmother's oxycodone, which, mind you, Sarah was the only one to comfort him at the bar about it. When grief asks Bear to remain present, Bear starts moving. A rehearsal instead of a confession, a purchase instead of grief, a wish instead of an answer. I do not think the willow creates that pattern. I think the willow notices it. Bear wishes for Nikki Freeman to love him more than anyone in the entire world. He didn't exactly say that. He said in this entire fucking world. Not freely, not healthily, not like while remaining herself, just more than anyone. The willow does exactly what he asked. The one wish willow does not corrupt Bear. It gives him admin access to something he was already trying to rewrite by hand. This is where I want to be precise about what happens to Nikki. She gets possessed is convenient language, but it lets the movie become safer than it is. Possession means something enters you. What happens to Nikki feels so closer to subtraction. The wish removes proportion, removes boundaries. It removes the parts of a life that allow love to coexist with work, friendship, privacy, dignity, and everything else that makes somebody a person. Most importantly, it removes the part of Nikki that can say no. Remains looks like Nikki, it sounds like Nikki, can touch Bear, feed Bear, defend Bear, reassure Bear, say every word he was too frightened to ask for. But none of those actions tell us anything about Nikki's feelings, because refusal is no longer available. Consent is not just the present of a yes, it's the continued availability of no. If no has been removed from the language, yes does not become more romantic, it becomes meaningless, it becomes haunting, it becomes frightening, it becomes harmful. That is why some of the movie's most tender looking moments are almost its most disturbing. We are seeing the visual grammar of a relationship, touch, care, devotion, without the freedom that gives any of those gestures value. The surface says love. Underneath it, somebody is screaming. The clearest proof is Nikki asking Bear to kill her. Whatever her conscious experience is inside the wish, she understands enough to know she is trapped. Also, another part of the movie that she is clearly expressing that she is screaming on the inside is because in the bedroom scene, the initial bedroom scene where she's pacing around and doing a sobbing gesture that is so memeable, is when she says, "I don't like my dreams. I hate my dreams," and that you can clearly tell that's the wish Nikki saying, "I don't like real Nikki's dreams," because it's telling the truth about what happened. And Bear receives the clearest testimony that the story can give him, and he makes it about himself. Nikki is describing this destruction of her autonomy. Bear hears a bad review. That is the moment ignorance stops being a complete defense. Maybe he did not understand what would happen when he snapped the twig. Maybe part of him thought it was a novelty. But Nikki tells him, and after that, he knows. The Jenga sequence makes the same horror physical. Nikki performs that grotesque Hansel and Gretel monologue. The room changes. Everybody realizes this is not just a friend behaving intensely. Bear pulls the instruction to kiss the person to his left, placing Sarah inside a playful possibility that does not include Nikki. Wish Nikki removes Sarah and inserts herself. Then Nikki turns the violence onto her own face. I read that as the suppressed Nikki fighting through the body available to her. The film leaves the exact mechanics ambiguous, so I'm not presenting that as confirmed fact. But what the scene shows us is the body being forced to enforce the relationship the person inside it did not choose. Calling Nikki the monster reverses the moral direction of the scene. She is terrifying to watch. She becomes dangerous, but danger is being carried through her and is not authored by her. The wish is using Nikki's face to carry out Bear's sentence. She is not the vessel, she's the hostage. Bear making the wish is the inciting mistake, but the movie does not judge him only for what he wanted before he understood the cost. He keeps handing him X's after the cost becomes impossible to ignore. That is where the story stops being about a bad wish and becomes a story about responsibility. Bear's not a mustache twirling villain. That would be easier. He's awkward. He is grieving. He panics. He apologizes. He makes attempts to fix what happened. The film gives him enough softness that we can keep telling ourselves that he's basically a good person who got unlucky. And it asks what good means once you know you're hurting somebody. Bear calls the Willow's customer service line and learns that the wish ends through death, which is not exactly useful. Customer service saying, have you tried one of you dying? Is a wild escalation possibility. He tries the hospital. The hospital does not understand what it's looking at and sends them away. That matters. Bear does seek help. The world does not hand him a competent adult with a reversal spell and a clipboard, but one failed institution does not end his responsibility. He brings Nikki home. He remains inside the relationship, and every time free Nikki conflicts with keep the version of Nikki who wants me, Bear hesitates. The restaurant phone call is one of the most important examples. Ian gives Bear secondhand information that Nikki may have seen him like a little brother before the wish, and also on top of that, he tells Bear that Nikki's dad is not really dying from cancer. That is not notarized proof of Nikki's soul, but Bear does not need courtroom certainty. He has already lost access to an answer he can trust. That should be enough. But once he understands Nikki's current affection may be manufactured, every affection it becomes unusable as evidence. He cannot know whether she would have kissed him. He cannot know whether they might have dated. He cannot know whether something real could have happened later. The wish has destroyed his ability to receive a meaningful yes. That is one of the quiet tragedies of the movie. Bear does not only violate Nikki's choice, he destroys his own access to the thing he wanted. Then the movie gives them the second Willow. Ian wastes the wish on a $1 billion joke. Bear explodes. His anger makes sense and may have wasted their cleanest intervention, but the scene also exposes the whole ecosystem. Bear uses impossible power to avoid an answer. Ian uses impossible power to turn panic into a joke and personal gain. Sarah carries truth and waits too long to say it. Everybody knows part of the story. Nobody assumes a responsibility early enough to change it. Technically, Bear is the protagonist, if you want to call him that. I know, film students, y'all can lower the rock and lower your pitchforks. He is the central character. His desire begins the plot. His choices organize the consequences. But protagonist has quietly picked up a moral meaning it was never supposed to have. We hear the word and think hero. We think this is the person moving toward truth, growth, repair, something. Bear moves, honestly, truthfully, but he just keeps moving away from responsibility. So when I say obsession has no protagonist, I do not mean there's literally no central character. I mean the heroic center is empty. Bear is chasing relief and is controlling when truth arrives. Sarah waits too long to say what she knows and what she feels. Nikki spends most of the film without the ability to choose at all. The only thing moving cleanly towards its goal is the wish. And by the end, the person with the least control is left holding all of the consequences. This is where I need to stop talking about Bear like I'm standing safely above him, because I'm not. Because the easiest version of this video is me spending half an hour explaining why fictional man failed a moral test I will never have to take. I've never found a one-witch willow. I've never magically removed somebody's ability to say no. But I have treated loneliness like evidence that I deserve to be chosen. I'm gonna get real for a second. In 2022, I had decided I deserved a relationship. I kept pursuing women. I kept pushing the narrative that I wanted a relationship, that I needed a relationship, and that getting one would mean something important about my life. This is real. I'm being so for real right now. I was focused on being chosen. I was not seriously asking whether I was capable of caring for another person well. And the truth is, I was barely caring for myself. I was out of therapy starting in 2022, and I did not get back into it until late 2024. During that time, I was spiraling. I had been hurt by women and by other people. Instead of working through that hurt, I started letting it shape how I treated the women and people I loved. That hurt did not stay inside me. I brought it into romantic relationships. I brought it into friendships. I brought it into situationships, those relationships where nobody wants to name what is happening, but everybody still finds a way to get hurt. I hurt people because I was hurt, and being hurt did not make me innocent. Somebody who loved me eventually said something I could not keep translating into the story where I was a victim. They said, I don't like who you're becoming and going to become. You need to change. I love you. You have people that love you, but you're making yourself out to be one of the hardest people to love. You are not a victim. You are the primary suspect in all of your downfalls. You cause and rectify pain in a lot of people, including yourself. Some of my wounds were real. Some people hurt me. Some things happened that I did not deserve. But I had started using the truth of my pain to avoid the truth of my behavior. I was so committed to proving I had been wounded that I could not see the people bleeding around me. That is the connection I feel to Bear. I'm not saying our actions are equivalent. I'm saying I recognize the interior move where another person's response becomes evidence in a case about your worth. If she chooses me, I matter. If she leaves, I'm being punished. If the relationship fails, it confirms that the world keeps doing something to me. That story protects you from a harder question. What was it to be loved like? What was it like to be loved by you? Now, what did you intend? Now, how much pain were you carrying? Now, whether you technically meant well, what did another person actually experience by being close to you? It was easier for me to pursue another relationship than examine the damage inside the last one. It was easier to want somebody new than become somebody safer. It was easier to call the loneliness a trial than ask whether some of it was also a consequence. Not every fire in my life was dropped on me, and some of them were fires I kept feeding while calling myself the person getting burned. Getting back into therapy did not retroactively make the harm noble because it eventually inspired growth. People are not practice level in somebody else's character development. An apology can be sincere without purchasing reconciliation, and restoring Nikki would mean restoring her ability to leave Bear. Real love would mean accepting an answer he cannot control. Bear wants to be chosen. He has not learned how to honor the chooser. And I know what it is to want the feeling of being chosen before becoming honest about what my presence was asking another person to survive. And that is why the ending cannot belong to Bear. His desire begins the story, but the cost is written onto Nikki. The ending takes every role these characters have forced onto one another and makes it physical. Nikki stands over what remains of Sarah while wearing her dress, copying her tattoos, and carrying part of her body. This is not just Nikki losing herself. This is the wish wearing Nikki wearing Sarah. 3 layers of a person being turned into somebody else's function. Ian arrives wish Nikki shoots him. Bear finally accepts there is no version of this where he keeps what he wanted. He locks himself in the bathroom, takes his grandmother leftover oxycodone. The same neglected medication that killed Sandy becomes the method of Bear's death. In the beginning, Bear discovers the consequences of something left unattended. At the end, he makes himself that consequences. Then another twig snaps. Nikki wishes for Bear to love her back. For one final moment, the movie creates the horrifying symmetry. Bear forced Nikki to love him. The version of Nikki created by that wish tries to close the loop by forcing the same thing onto Bear. Nobody asks, nobody chooses. The relationship approaches perfect reciprocity only after both people's freedom has been removed from it, and Bear dies. The wish breaks. The real Nikki wakes up. She does not wake up relieved. She does not receive justice. She does not get an explanation. She returns to her own body surrounded by the consequences of actions committed through it. Her friends are dead. Bear is dead. Sarah's body has been transformed into part of a nightmare Nikki appears to have authored. There's no clean way to prove the person wearing Nikki's face was built out of somebody else's wish. The film does not need a sequel to make her future horrifying. Look at the room. Look at her body. Look at who is no longer not alive to tell the truth. That's enough. Bear is the narrative protagonist because his desire begins the story. Nikki's the moral center because she wanted the least and loses the most. Bear wanted to be chosen. Nikki wanted to control when truth arrived. Sarah wanted time to say what she felt. Wish Nikki wanted Bear with the same totality Bear demanded from her. And the real Nikki wanted none of it. And she inherits all of it. I've seen people say obsession was not scary. And if scary means jumps, stingers, and something hiding in the corner of the frame, I understand that argument. But obsession is not mainly interested in your heart rate. It is retroactive horror. The fear is not what is about to happen. The fear is what have I already done. That horror does not always hit during the scene. It hits after. It's when the movie is over and your brain starts reopening moments you thought were harmless. Most horror movies tell you where to stand. Here's the protagonist, here's the threat, root for one, fear the other. Obsession refuses to make the seating chart that clean. For a large part of the movie, we are aligned with Bear. We understand the awkwardness, we understand the loneliness. We may even want him to win. Then the film slowly makes us aware that we have been sitting in the wrong seat. That's a sketch comedy rug pull again. In a sketch, the rug pull is the punchline and you laugh. Here, the rug pull is that the movie successfully recruited you, and there is nowhere uncomfortable to put that realization. Bear's not possessed. There's no demon available to absorb the blame. The will does not change who he is. It removes the friction that kept what he wanted from having consequences. That's why the movie works as both horror and tragedy. For the horror to work, Bear's feelings have to be real. If he is an obvious creep from frame one, there's no movie. There's just a warning label. The horror requires sincerity. He is sincere. It's what makes it unbearable. Sincerity is not a defense. Loving somebody for real does not automatically make what you are doing love. You can want something with your whole chest and still be doing harm. Sometimes the wanting is the engine of the harm. I do not even think Bear is mainly chasing Nikki's body. He's chasing a narrative. He wants to be the main character in the story where he gets the girl. Nikki is cast in it without an audition, without a contract, and without being asked. Bear wants the ending. She becomes a plot point. Plot points do not love you back. That's Barker's genius. He uses comedy's familiar character to get us into Bear's story, then uses horror to reveal the person the story erased. I do not think obsession is telling us that wanting love is evil. That would be a useless lesson. People want to be loved. People want partnership. People want to feel chosen by somebody who sees them clearly and stays. There's nothing shameful about that desire. The danger begins when the desire becomes evidence. I want it, therefore I deserve it. I have suffered, therefore somebody should repair me. I feel deeply, therefore the other person should feel the same. I will treat them well in the future, I imagine, therefore the person standing in front of me owes that future a chance. Wanting somebody is not proof that you are ready to care for them. Being wounded can explain why you behave a certain way. It cannot make everybody around you responsible for absorbing that behavior. And another person's no is not an obstacle between you and the life you deserve. It is an answer from a life that does not belong to you. That is what Bear cannot accept. It is also what I had to start accepting about myself. The work is not cinematic. It is learning to stop calling yourself the victim when you were also causing the wound. It is accepting that some people may love you and still need distance from who you became. It is understanding that your apology can be sincere and the answer can still be no. It is becoming somebody who can hear another person's pain without immediately asking what it says about you. I'm still doing that work. That is where this ends. Not with me safely separating myself from Bear. Not with me deciding I'm permanently the same as him. With the uncomfortable recognition that the distance between wanting love and treating somebody lovingly is filled with responsibility. Bear wants the first part. He keeps trying to escape the second, and Nikki pays for the distance between them. The horror is not that Bear wanted to be loved. It is that he treated being loved like something another person owed him before he learned how not to make his pain their responsibility. That is why this is the most uncomfortable movie I've ever seen. It did not ask me whether I could survive Nikki's nightmare. It asked me how close I've ever come to writing a story onto somebody else and calling it love. I'll see y'all in the next one. I'll see y'all in the streams. Y'all have a nice night, and remember, wanting the desire of love and having the desire to love someone is not the same thing. I'll see y'all in the streams. Link in the description. Bye.